Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. Welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. We've got our fingers crossed that we are coming live to you from our Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn page because we had a couple of blips last week. And so if you're out there and you're on the Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn page, please tell me that you're there because I'd love to know if it's working, or at least AJ giving me the thumbs up. Yay, I'm very, very happy about that. Okay, good. So, my name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain. I am also the founder and host of the Blended podcast, which is the newest conversation in diversity and inclusion. And I'm going to be talking about that in just a minute. I'm super excited for our guest today, and I can't wait to introduce you to him. But before we do that, we do need to talk about what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain right now. So, our newest episode is episode 222 with Vision. And we talk all about building the future of digital logistics with Vision. And they're going about it a really smart, a really easy, and a really simple way. So, if you want to learn a little bit more about what they're doing, and their CEO, Kyle, he's got an incredible background of a story as well, which we go into during that episode. So it's wherever you subscribe to the Let's Talk Supply Chain podcast. We also have it over on letstalksupplychain.com under podcast as well. And we've got some events coming up. So this Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, Eric Johnson is going to be hosting another Log Tech Live. So he's giving you some dad jokes. He's talking about the buzzwords in the industry. He's also going to have a special guest from the logistics sector, Angela from Shapiro. And they're going to be talking about what's happening in logistics technology. So you're not going to want to miss that. That one is at 10 a.m. on Friday. And then November 18th, I see Larry is out there in the audience. So he knows Procurement Foundry puts on an amazing, amazing conference. And I am super excited to be part of that in the morning, and it's going to be a great one. So head over to procurementfoundry.com to check that one out. And then, of course, in January, we've got Manifest, which is still going to be in person, still going to be in Vegas. And I think their wrap party has Ludacris. And I think they're going to have, a puppy bar or something like that. There's going to be some really cool, there's going to be some autonomous vehicles, I think, that you can hop on and hop off of. So it's going to be a very, very, very cool event as well. What else have we got? Oh, so I need to let you guys know we were only allowed to let the public know last week, but I have been honored on the Woman in Supply Chain list by Supply and Demand Chain Executive. I want to thank them so much for including me in the list this year. There's some incredible, incredible women on this list. So I implore you to go and check that out. And super excited to be named on that list as well. And then we've got Blended. So this episode came out last week. And I'm talking to a panel of powerhouse women all about immigration and identity. And the things that I learned from this episode, I can't even explain it to you. I mean, there are so many things that we need to think about, we need to potentially change, especially around talent and hiring talent. And, we think we live in a diverse society, but when you listen to Martha talk about how she grew up, it's just amazing, amazing what is happening in other countries as well. Last thing I want to let you know about is obviously my LinkedIn learning course is out. It's called The Fundamentals of Sustainable Supply Chains. Getting some amazing, amazing feedback on this. So would love to hear from you. Hopefully you're going to take it and give us some feedback, because definitely would love to hear from you. And then we've got some fun stuff happening over on Instagram. So if you go to the Let's Talk Supply Chain Instagram page and you DM us Talk1, you're going to get all sort of insider tips, and you'll also get access to our supply chain dictionary for free. So I implore you to go over there as well. All right, without further ado, I am going to be bringing up My guest, I was recently featured in one of his articles, which I am very, very, very thankful for. And we're going to be talking about that today as well. But this is really exciting, folks, because he writes for Forbes and entrepreneur.com and inc.com about supply chain. And it's amazing. So let's bring him up today. Hello, Bill. You're on mute. So just make sure you take yourself off mute before you say hello. There we go. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you doing?
Great. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. I mean, you and I have been talking for quite a while,
Yeah.
and I was recently honored to be included in one of your articles. So why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I began my career in manufacturing a long time ago. Spent about a decade in global distribution, and then really got into the analytics world after that. So I've really kind of enjoyed getting back to supply chain, but very much on the side of understanding and diagnosing issues. And I think, yeah, thanks for the shout out on the article. It's one of the big challenges that I think we all talk about is the reality that there's not enough technology and AI and ML that's utilized for supply chain. It seems like the obvious place.
Absolutely. And we're going to be talking about that article because you and I have a similar philosophy, I think, on supply chain and how we really need to integrate it into our business philosophy and how we need to bring all of the departments together to really make magic happen, really. So
Yeah.
we're going to get into that a little bit because we're going to cover two of your articles today. But I do want to say hi to Cricket. I also want to say hi to Jackie over on my personal LinkedIn page. Thank you guys for joining us today. Super excited. All right. So what's the first thing that we're going to talk about? We are going to talk about our question of the week. And this is actually quite fitting because when you talk about first mile, you can't talk about first mile without thinking about Mercado. And you and I are very, very good friends with Robert Garrison, the CEO of Mercado. And
Yep.
and we talk about the first mile all the time. So last week we asked everybody, when evaluating the first mile of your supply chain, what is the biggest value driver for your organization? So we actually reached a bunch of people. It took that number away from me, but we had 346 votes. 49% said improving on-time delivery. 32% says optimizing inventory levels, 17% says employee workflow efficiency, and then I'm going to get into other in just a minute. But looking at this question and how we got these answers back, what are your thoughts on this, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first mile is really the one place that people have historically had a lot of trouble controlling.
Yeah.
A lot of what's done is manual, and I think particularly if you're a smaller mid-sized company, it's difficult to know if there's a way to better kind of understand and be able to take advantage of that first mile. I think the reasons that people gave are absolutely great reasons. I mean, I thought about the question myself, and for me, it would be one word, which is control.
Yeah.
Without a connected supply chain, how do you control anything downstream? So we have all these great tools in the last mile, but in the first mile, we're still lagging quite a bit. And I really think there's a great opportunity for change there.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in our first article. But Majub says the main driver for me in First Mile is negotiation and category management at the sourcing level. And then Josh also says the inventory being correct in terms of quantity and balance so that he can move forward in his supply chain. So we've had a lot of really, really great comments on that particular question. So if you want to go and check that out, I think AJ, can you post that link in the comments so that everybody can go to that post and weigh in who wants to weigh in on the first mile as well. Want to say good morning to our good friend Peter. He's the one that always keeps us on track and on time. I will get the 5-minute warning mark at 10:25, I'm sure, from him as well. Davin says, welcome, Bill. And thank you guys all for joining us. All right, so what are we going to talk about next? We are going to talk about my thoughts and coffee post. So this post I come out with every Sunday, and it's more about leadership than it is about supply chain. And one of the reasons why I want to talk about this on Thoughts and Coffee and really put this out there and get people thinking about leadership is because the only way forward in supply chain is with good leaders and with people who are thinking about things other than supply chain, right? So this particular post was about moving forward at your own pace. Life isn't a race. And it's something that I talk about all the time, where it's not really that destination. It's all about the journey and getting there. And Bill, you have been in corporate positions, you've been an entrepreneur, you've had a really amazing career thus far, and I can see great things for you still coming forward. But what do you think about this, being from a corporate world and an entrepreneur? What does this kind of mean for you from a leadership perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think career development, career milestones, kind of the entirety of planning for a career is tricky in a modern world because so many things are happening. And I think if you're a person who has a lot of interests and finds different aspects of a subject intriguing, there are a lot of different ways you can go. I mean, you look at supply chain, there's so many different facets, careers, opportunities. But I agree. I think it's incumbent upon leaders to help their teams find a path to a successful career. I think that changing careers is a great way to really learn another skill set. So I think as an individual, I've certainly really enjoyed the different industries I've been in, even just in manufacturing and distribution. Got exposure to a ton of different types of products, different processes, all of the above. And I think if you have a good basis and a curiosity, to really understand the world, understand the place where you want to go industry wise and so forth, then you'll always be growing. So I agree 100%. The journey's where it's at. That's what matters.
Yeah. And I think as a leader, encouraging your teams to celebrate the wins. Because in a lot of different examples and a lot of different cases, we've seen people flourish at all different ages. Whether you're 25, whether you're 35, whether you get your first major acting role at 40, 45, or 60, or you write a book that really takes off. A lot of these things are happening later on in life, but it's the leaders that are going to help us celebrate in the moment and learn how to celebrate in the moment that are really going to give that patience back to us and be like, wait a second, it doesn't all have to happen by the time I'm 25.
That's right.
I don't know what the rest of that journey looks like, and it could happen later on in life, and I'm okay with that. But at the moment and right now, I'm going to celebrate the wins that I have right now. And I think that that's super important because a lot of times we impose that on ourselves. And
Yep.
I know for me, I have a hard time celebrating those wins, right? And I don't know about you as an entrepreneur, but if somebody else is saying, no, you need to take a moment and you need to celebrate this, it's kind of different, right?
Yeah, it's tough, I think, as an entrepreneur because you have such a up and down set of days on a regular basis. You have a couple wins, you have a couple steps back, couple steps forward. I think, a lot of the research that's been done is really about grit. And so being able to kind of continue on and press forward regardless, I think really is what enables you to be successful in that regard. I also think mentorship, to your point on leadership, I mean, having good mentor. I have mentors that I've had for almost 20 years. When I began my career, they shaped and helped me kind of become a leader. I still go back to them because they know me, they understand, the goals. And I think that anytime you have that type of relationship, it's only going to help to get those ideas and bounce them off of others and really have someone help give you that advice and backing that you need.
Absolutely. Well, I want to give a shout out to Elias, Christina, Jovita, and Esat over on my personal LinkedIn page. Thank you so much for joining us for Thoughts and Coffee this week. All right, let's get to our supply chain articles. And so the first one is the article written by Bill that includes me as a contributor. And again, we're talking about first mile. And there's a lot really to talk about because I think first mile doesn't get the light that, last mile gets, right? Everybody puts an emphasis on last mile and getting the product to the customer. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later too. But I think first mile is really that important part of the supply chain that has several different moving parts, and not everybody is talking to each other, but it's extremely, extremely important that they do. And we really learned that through COVID. So walk me through why you wrote this article, what we can expect from this article, and what did you like, writing this article?
Sure. Well, I felt like there was a real challenge with people not being able to understand the difference between first and last mile.
Yeah.
Looks like did I freeze?
Yeah, that's okay. Keep going. We can hear you.
All right. Without my lips moving. I think really what was intriguing to me is a lot of people focus on last mile, and we focus on last mile because we're used to Amazon. We're used to kind of these overnight or 2-day deliveries. In some cases, Amazon will courier stuff straight to you. I've done that when I'm on travel. And all of that is very understandable. It's very tight in the way that we can monitor and track it. I think a lot of people think of shipping as kind of, well, if I can't get containers, which is a thing right now, then I can't do my job. But the reality is a lot of this begins before that, and I think that explaining first mile, last mile is important so that people understand what it is. And so I really, the article itself, I really spent time to kind of go through the distinction between first and last mile, and really kind of lay that out for people so that it could start, a series of discussions. And so I think there'll be follow-ups to this article. But, my true belief is that right now there's an immense opportunity for transformation. And that opportunity, really deserves the attention right now on the first mile, because that's where you can affect things the most. And I've been through really 3 major transformations in different industries in my life. And I think that this one in particular is one of the biggest opportunities. I mean, the pandemic has highlighted just how much money has been lost, customers lost, companies not able to keep up. So I just felt it was a really critical place to kind of start the discussion.
Absolutely. And you talk about a couple of different challenges. There was 5 different challenges in that particular article. And what I wanted to ask you is, what are you hearing around local manufacturing? Is that kind of the answer to this? Because I'm seeing a lot more articles come out. Lisa from New York Supply Chain Meetup, she posted something this morning about how Nike is taking a hit in revenue. We talked last week about Peloton taking a hit in revenue because of supply chain challenges. Is this because of the first mile, or because they haven't focused enough on supply chain? What is the answer here?
Well, I don't think it's an easy answer, right? I mean, supply chain, on its face is very complicated. It's a series of workflows, and I think that onshoring, which is happening a lot right now, is one way I think companies are starting to ensure that they have, some additional abilities that they might not have just producing overseas. But I don't think that's the full answer. I think the full answer is a set of things that we need to do to prepare the supply chain to be more resilient, that being one of them. But I think, understanding who your manufacturers are is something that when I've talked to a lot of folks, who are doing manufacturing of a product for a first time. And I was with someone last week and they were talking about skincare products. It's really hard to know where to go and what to focus on. But I do think having visibility, having a complete loop with all of the folks along that way is one added aspect. I think another aspect is raw materials and as you point out, the potential of onshoring, as well as opening in other areas. If you're in China, you may be looking at Southeast Asia. There's just a variety of, I think, optionality that folks are trying to set up in their supply chains right now.
Absolutely. And one of the numbers that you actually quoted in that article was that we are importing upwards or even more than $2 trillion worth of goods, which is absolutely crazy. And if we think about where we are right now, and that just increasing and all the strain that's on supply chain, I can only imagine what's going to happen in the next couple of years if we don't get this under control.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the solutions to this exist. It's really, one of the points I tried to make in the article was, it's really incumbent upon us as leaders to say, look, here's a huge opportunity for my business. Me taking the steps to start a digital transformation now is going to help my shareholders. It's going to help my customers. And importantly, it's going to help my employees and their job satisfaction. So they're not on the phone at 12 o'clock in the morning, on something that, quite frankly, they could just check in the morning through a system. And I think, all of those three factors, are really important reasons to make the decision to modernize your supply chain.
Yeah. And that actually takes us into our next article. It was a great segue, Bill. It's almost like you know what we're going to be talking about next. But before we do that, I just want to say hi to Colin and Joe Selena, who have also joined us over on my personal LinkedIn page. So this next article is about business travel. Now, I know it's not necessarily about supply chain, but it is about what we can expect in the industry as far as how we're going to be meeting up and whether we're going to be traveling as much as we did pre-pandemic. So business travel actually accounts for 75% of the airline's profits. But there's a lot of enterprise companies that have come out and said that they're going to scale their business travel back by 84%. And a couple of reasons for that. One is less air travel means less CO2. So it's actually building towards their sustainability strategy. They also talk about employee well-being. I never actually have heard about this before, but they said people who travel the most are at risk of cancer, like obesity, which I thought was a little bit weird. And what we're looking at in the airline industry is $174 billion in losses between 2020 and 2021. However, there's a lot of people that are still optimistic even after all of this. So, Bill, what are you hearing in the business sector and from corporations? Are we going to get back to normal with business travel? Are we stuck on Zoom for the rest of our lives? What are we doing?
I mean, I think it's kind of a mixed bag depending on the industry. I mean, I talk with our bankers about it, investment bankers for one of our companies, and they've said, look, I've gotten more deals done now than ever because even for a roadshow, I'm just hopping on Zoom. And so I think, for some folks, it's driven, some efficiency during the pandemic. But those same people say I need to be in front of my customers to close deals. So I think it really depends on the industry. But I do think a lot of us feel, and anecdotally speaking to other leaders, I think a lot of us feel like there's a lot of extra travel that's maybe unnecessary. Okay. I thought that in Rob's article, he made a good point though about live events like conferences and things like that. I think, when people get back to conferences, there's still going to be plenty of travel for that. And I know for me, meeting with my customers is something that I really want to do in person. So, we're here in Manhattan. It's actually fairly easy to meet somebody in an outside space, open air, and really sit down and talk about things. So none of us actually knows what the future holds. I can't imagine that it'll continue to be just as as little travel as it is right now, because I think people want to see each other. They want to share ideas. They want to communicate, and they really want to spend the time. I did love that stat, the same one you pointed out. I was like, wow, and I guess if you think about it, if you're doing a ton of travel as a business traveler, you're sitting so much. I would assume that kind of based on that Rob was kind of drawing that conclusion that it is very risky, and it makes a lot of sense, especially coming from somebody who about 3 years ago I was traveling every other week to San Francisco, and I will say it does take a toll on your body. You feel kind of beat up after you're going coast to coast, and that's just, I think, one of the reasons that a lot of folks are saying, is that really necessary?
Yeah. Well, and ALIX Partners, as a part of this article, talks about how they think the biggest cuts are going to be internal meetings and training, which I was really surprised at, because I'm hearing from organizations that they definitely want to bring their people together, because they miss that part of everybody being in the office. And it's very difficult to have relationships with everybody if we're always on Zoom. But let's get to our next article, and this one is another article by you. This was put out, I think, late last year. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it was. I believe it was put out like mid-pandemic, and really the idea was to kind of draw attention to the fact that the next digital transformation should really be supply chain, and that resiliency is important. And at that time, we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last. So really the idea was, let's just highlight this and make sure people understand how critical it is. I think at the time, everybody was scouring the internet for toilet paper. So it really started to become a more mainstream issue. And I think when that happens, there's great opportunity to start a conversation and really rethink the way you do things.
Yeah, and we're kind of getting back there, because I heard from Costco the other day that even though they've chartered their own vessels, they're still going to be they're still going to be stopping people from buying certain products in bulk. You're only going to be able to buy certain products, by the 2s or the 3s, maybe. I don't know. They're going to limit how much you're going to buy. So we're still kind of in that space. But what I really liked about this article is that you're saying that customer experience lynches on supply chains. And I've been talking about this for a very long time. So I read this article and I was like, yes, finally, we've got it out into mainstream. But you also talk about customer-centric supply chains. Do you want to elaborate on that? I don't hear that term very often, but I feel like it could become a buzzword.
Yeah. So thanks for pointing that out. It's funny. So I was having conversations with a couple of leaders in customer success, an industry I was in for a period of time, for almost 5 years. And really, I think what is kind of a critical aspect of supply chain is the effect. How does it affect your client base? And so in customer success and even in sales, we have this concept of the customer being the center of everything. So you make decisions based on the needs of your customer, and it's called a customer first philosophy. My feeling is supply chain, it's even that much more pronounced, because if you think about customer success in software, which is where it's talked about a lot in SaaS, it's very easy to say, okay, yeah, I want to put the customer at the front of everything we do, because they're engaging with your software. It's not a physical product. And it's easier to do that. I think when it comes to physical products, there's so much that has to happen, as we've kind of talked about earlier in the show. You got to get a product from here to there. If it's a new product introduction, you've got a whole set of time in kind of perfecting and putting together your planning, and then choosing partners and so forth to manufacture, and then you still got to get it there. So I think what I saw with some of the new D2C companies is the challenges of not having an understanding and visibility of that entire supply chain made it really difficult to put the customer first. Absolutely. Because you don't really understand where the journey's breaking down, And so we talk about customer journey a lot, from the point that someone has interest in your product and starts looking into it, all the way through to the time that they make a purchase, and then the post-purchase, which is, are they going to come back? And I think all of these things for physical products are directly affected by supply chain, either positively or negatively. And I think ultimately, again, to go back to Amazon, because they seem to do it the best, you look at, our expectation now as consumers, we expect stuff to come when we order it fairly quickly. And so there's a lot of behind the scenes work that companies have to do to ensure that happens. But it all comes back to their customers, because without those customers, we're not selling any products.
It's so true. And one of the facts that you said was 13% revenue increase by focusing on supply chains. And that's coming from businesses themselves. Well, we are out of time. Peter has already given me the 60-second warning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Audrey will be back with me next week. And I hope you guys all have a great week ahead.